Welcome back to the Honest Voice Podcast. I'm Carolsue.
I'm Todd. And today we're going to be talking about male communication. And we're going to be talking about like one aspect of it. Later on, we're going to get into certain nuances of do's and don'ts because there's a lot of conflict out there socially right now. The main thing is the emotionality aspect of it, the scripts that we were given, the way society makes us think we're supposed to talk in certain ways.
And the myths that we have all sometimes spoken, sometimes unspoken, the myths and the messages that we have about the way, in this case, men are supposed to communicate that actually end up making it very challenging to have honest and comfortable communication later in life.
Since you brought up myths, you know, a couple of those myths are just very simply emotional restraint equals strength. Emotional expression, maintaining that is where strength is. When you can maintain your expression, when you're basically providing information emotionally without escalating, that's different. But repression or suppression,
exactly,
that's not healthy. It's not healthy to just stuff it down. And a lot of people actually use that kind of thing as almost like a performance excuse, like, I'm not going to say it. I don't want to say it. It's just going to make me mad. You know, and those are all choices. If you're saying out loud, that's going to make me mad, right there, you're already showing that you're going to be putting on quite the act for that. Because if you told me this is going to make you mad, my first thing would be, no, it's not. You know, just go ahead and let me know what it is. Because your choice to get mad at that information is a whole different thing.
It's exactly that. It's a choice.
Yeah. And another thing is the word vulnerability. And I want to bring that up. The word vulnerability is something that men are taught to basically avoid, but it's only called vulnerability because we've created it to be such a vulnerability. I mean, socially speaking up for yourself, that shouldn't be disclosing something intimate or personal. You know, we've created this fragility to it where really I think the progression needs to just be say what you think, what you feel, the kindest and most honest way that you can. Also learn to be more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Because we call it vulnerability because we're concerned about what's going to happen back.
That's right.
Yeah. So, well, if I apologize, what if they don't accept it and then they make me feel stupid? All of those things are social constructs. If you apologize, you're doing the right thing. You're showing that you are taking responsibility for something, and it doesn't matter how that person responds to it. It doesn't matter if they choose to continue to try to make you feel worse about the event that caused the apology or provoke the apology. That's on them. But the main thing is you did your part to apologize, whatever it was.
Yeah, it's another one of those places where we're putting the emphasis on the result instead of the action itself. The important thing about an apology is that proactive gesture, and that you're saying, I want to give you this message. I understand you can take it a lot of ways, but it's important for me that you know that I do regret the way I acted. And if we focus only on doing that when we think we're going to get what we want out of it, then it's not really a genuine attempt at connection or apologizing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another myth is that men are supposed to be independent and never ask for help. You know, and we work with law enforcement when it comes to teaching crisis de-escalation, verbal de-escalation. We work with first responders a lot, and these are the helpers. So there's a very widespread mindset that they should never ask for help. But this is also just perpetuated in society toward males. We've been discussing with our previous podcast that we're all different. So asking for help is another mindset. It's another idea. It's just, hey, what do you think a better way of doing this would be? Because I have a very specific history. I have a very specific learning environment. So you might have ideas that I never thought of. So together, we're always going to have a better idea than individually trying to say, well, I should be able to handle that. And in the Navy, I got a lot of that all the time. It's like, well, you're a chief, you should know better. It's like, where is that written? You know, right? You're a chief, you should know that information. And, you know, that's society trying to make me think that I'm deficient in that moment because I said, yeah, I have no idea. And I'm very comfortable saying I have no idea. I would rather have no idea and have people laugh at me just for the sake of trying to beat me down for not knowing something, which is an ongoing social problem that we've actually written about.
Yes, we have.
I would rather have that than say something that's going to hurt people or going to mess up something or is going to create a problem before a better solution can come along. So that's one of the kind of things.
Yeah, and the last myth we'll point out is that control and leadership are the same thing. And this is another, it's just on that same theme of men are supposed to be strong and silent and in charge. And what we find is much more successful, especially in the realm of relationships, is collaboration, not having to control and have restraint all the time, but being willing to share your own thoughts and your own feelings, even if it's uncomfortable, because that's how you connect with your partner, your friend, your coworker, whoever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And both of us, you're currently in a major leadership role, and I've been in leadership roles in the past. And actually, control is one of the worst forms of leadership.
So true.
Yeah, if you're trying to make people do things without bringing their ideas, their perspectives, their creativity into the mix, then we try to stay away from like negative variables. Mm-hmm. We don't say anything dishonest. Like if you're in a car accident and we come up to you and say, well, at least you lived, it's like, no, but my car, we get that. So we don't do that, what people are calling now toxic positivity.
That's right.
Okay, we're very realistic, but the main thing is that a person in charge does their best when they empower the people that they're trying to develop, because honestly, the one thing that I see a lot in leadership is that leaders are not trying to develop their subordinates. That is very problematic. Like if you can't take a week off because you have nobody to cover, that's, I don't mean to be blunt, but this is like a Navy thing that we would joke about, would be like, well, if you can't take a day off, that sounds like a leadership problem on your part. So you should always be, as we used to say, training your relief, and you should always be empowering your people, and you should always be taking their ideas and seeing what it is they can do instead of feeling the need to control everything. The idea of this would never get done if I didn't do it myself kind of thing, that's just an expression that people use to make other people around them feel bad. I mean, honestly, is that too?
No, I laugh because I just picture previous supervisors in my brain.
Oh, yeah.
Hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. So honestly, the best thing you could do is teach that person, train them how to do that specific thing. But a lot of people do that with the trying to be the martyr about it. Like, I have to just do everything myself because nobody listens to me. Well, if no one's listening to you, you might not be communicating effectively. So let's work on that instead of just complaining that other people are jumping to your mind reading kind of things.
Right. Yeah. So control, if it's used, can cover up a lot of poor communication skills. If you have to have control, maybe it's because you don't feel as comfortable to express yourself emotionally and be a little bit vulnerable, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Right.
And these myths sort of exist without us talking about them very much, but they do show up with examples of phrases that we hear quite often. Things like, men don't cry.
Yeah.
It's something that is taught to little boys from a very early age. You fall down and you skin your knee when you're riding your bike, and toughen up, shake it off.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you've got a bone sticking out of your leg. No, I'm just kidding. It's not that bad.
That's the message of don't show an emotional reaction to something that hurts you. So it starts really, really young.
Yeah. And of course, the idea of having control, you hear a lot of people just say, handle it yourself. Just do it yourself. And you should be able to handle anything anyone else can do. Well, while that may be a certain mentality in certain specific kind of areas, everybody can benefit from assistance. I mean, interdependence is the way to go, not independence.
Yes.
Being able to work effectively with others while not needing that. Now, that's a big thing that I always say. Like when it comes to support, you should be able to get support, but if you can't, you should also be able to adapt and handle it the best you can. But you should not be avoiding that assistance, is probably the best way to say. Like all these things that we say could be taken out of context, and
of course,
certain variables that apply and certain variables that don't. So keep in mind, we're talking about generalizations and we're talking about mainstream communication here.
Exactly right. And don't show weakness.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah.
I grew up with a lot of that. In fact, that's a kind way of saying it, but like the man up thing, or quit being a whatever is a condescending term after that to try to motivate you. None of that works.
No.
And none of it builds character. I'm just going to say that right now. You do not build character by throwing somebody in the water and watching them paddle and they've never learned how to swim and saying, that's going to make him stronger, he's going to be able to swim. It doesn't work that way. What builds character is letting somebody deal with a conflict and supporting them and guiding them through that conflict so they can build the skills to deal with that conflict more effectively next time, or similar conflicts.
Yeah. So these kind of myths show up in communication in certain different ways. Maybe most importantly, feelings are minimized or ignored. From a very young age, it's often the case that young boys are not taught how to identify their feelings, how to process them, how to understand them, and instead they're encouraged to dismiss them or ignore them.
Yeah, and a lot of times the emotions will be identified as actions, and really it's not about the emotionality of it. It's really what can we do to try to better a situation in that moment. So if you get bothered by something, of course we can escalate that and say we're angry or we don't like it.
Annoyed,
yeah, so we can either choose to shut down or we can choose to act aggressive in those moments. But those are choices, and those are the things that society is used to.
Yes.
They become familiar. We see it in everything. And this is the one barrier to everything we're telling you about in all of our podcasts, is that the negative behavior, the problematic behavior, the dysfunctional type of communication, it is modeled in every medium that you can imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't turn on a TV show without seeing somebody shaming somebody else, somebody yelling at their kids, somebody yelling at their partner, a leader screaming. All of this stuff is constantly reinforced and perpetuated and influences us.
Yeah.
So trying to get, as we say, getting back to our basics. And really, we're not teaching you anything. We're actually trying to get you to shed the poor influences that we've all had put on us, poor models of leadership where they're reactive, controlling, condescending even. They use a lot of shame language, like I'm really disappointed in you, thinking that's going to make people rise to the occasion, and it really just makes them silent, just beats them down. We've talked about that.
So in these situations, problems turn into tasks to fix instead of experiences to understand. So if you have, as a young man, if you have a day when you just feel sad, you're encouraged to just dismiss that. Think about something else, man up, whatever the wording is, but that means we're not taking an opportunity to understand what those emotions are, the fact that sad days are normal, maybe processing if something happened that brought on that sadness. So all these opportunities to start doing emotional education are missed because these myths tell us that men should be strong and men should just be able to move past it and ignore it.
Yeah, it's true. And these are loops. These are constant loops that we're in when it comes to these kind of things, because what happens is that, say you feel sad one day, and what happens is that people around you can't handle it very well. They're the ones that are saying, come on, man, let's get outside. Let's go do something. And you're like, I'm just not up for it. And they're like, well, why are you being such a whatever, and whatever kind of insulting word they can put after it. So it's not so much about your emotions that are the problem. It's the way people handle it around you, because they're not comfortable with this yet. So there's going to be a lot of pushback. When you learn these communication styles, and we learn firsthand, in some cases you lose friends. I mean, it happens. It's happened. When you tell a friend that's been taking advantage of you or constantly uses little insults to try to get your attention. Like, one of my things is, I'm retired, so I don't always answer my texts right away. So I get friends that will say, yeah, you're really bad at that. And it's like, I'm not bad at that. I'm actually very good at ignoring the text until I am ready to respond to that
Setting
text.
my own boundaries about when I'm going to communicate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from an era where we had a phone hanging on the wall and we had an answering machine that recorded that you didn't even see till you got home. So responding immediately is actually me setting myself free from this constant being stuck on my phone kind of thing. So, but that response, you're bad at that, rather than, hey, I understand you have a boundary and you don't respond right away. And even asking, what could I do if it's an urgent situation? I review those things. I just don't take the time to respond back right away, because I might be working on something and I don't want to lose my train of thought. Because for me, if I lose my train of thought, I may never get it back.
Right.
But
that's a good example of you feeling like you've set this boundary for yourself, but there's still a need to explain the context of the why, because that pressure is so there to constantly be responsive and and all of that.
Yeah, it's all harmful, having that constant negative pressure to act a certain way. But the bottom line is, we have to be more comfortable with making these decisions for ourselves, and we have to be more comfortable with checking the outcomes of these decisions. And we have to get away from the negative criticism influencing us, and that's a big deal. I mean, and that's where bullies thrive. That's where
abuse develops.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
Some cases,
exactly, because of that influence and that negativity and that pressure to act a certain way based on somebody else's desires or discomfort or lack of communication skills so far. Because the thing is that we want to teach these things, but the best you can do is model them and stand firm with them when you see that they're being effective and that they're actually working. But also, don't let outsiders take away your ability to handle your own emotions and discuss what it is that you want to talk about.
Absolutely right. So, although it may not seem like these are permanently damaging kind of ways to live, think about if you've ever heard somebody say to you, look, let's just not get into that. If you try to share something with someone and they say, let's just not get into that right now, that's a dismissal. It may not immediately be recognized as such, but that's what it is. Whatever your emotions are, they're too much for me to handle. I don't feel like talking about them. Let's just move on to something else. Yeah.
And you know what? Frequently when you get that response, it's never going to come back. Okay.
Oh, for sure. Exactly right.
If you don't handle it right then and there. Now, maybe best case scenario, we've talked about this before, if somebody needs to prep themselves, they need to calm themselves down before they get into this conversation. but you really need to stick to having the conversation.
Yes.
So many people never get anything solved because they work in these situations where you say something simple like, well, I've been feeling a little pressure lately, and I'd just like to let you, like to a boss, I'd just like to let you know what my workflow is, because I don't think you see my entire workload, and you keep adding more things to it.
Yes.
And it's like, well, oh, are you trying to say I don't do it right? Immediately starts with that defensiveness and trying to call you what you said, rude.
Yeah.
That's inappropriate or something like that, when it's exactly identifying a deficiency in their style. That's becoming problematic. But all those words, there was nothing harmful about it. It wasn't rude. It's just, I'm trying to explain this to you. And you should be able to express that. And there shouldn't be situations that prohibit you from that.
So what we find when you live in a relationship where you cannot express yourself emotionally, then something that could be an opportunity for connection with someone you care about instead becomes performance, because it's been determined not to be a safe place to be emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah, and when you do that performance, then that performance becomes, it becomes a character.
Yes.
And what happens with that character is that it's sort of one-dimensional. Like the character that you put out in front is this single person that doesn't do this, does this, doesn't do this. There's so many little variables that becomes the character. But when you're doing that, you're not experiencing your own personal responses to things. You're not examining them. You're not expanding them at all, because you've got this very specific, I only allow these 5 things to occur when I'm in the workplace. I will not respond to that kind of thing because people will blow up. I will not speak my mind. I will not offer an idea because people will laugh at me. There's just this list of things that we do because of the responses of other people. And that's where we have to build our coping skills. The thing that I do is, a great coping skill is to not avoid things, but consider how you will effectively handle it when it hits you. If they laugh, say, well, I did my best. That's it. Yeah. I don't respond to it. Don't get upset. Don't respond in such a way that it shows that kind of ridicule is actually impacting you, because that just perpetuates it. It's the type of bullying thing. Once I see that I can make you be fearful, or I can make you shut down, then I'm going to use that tool from now on.
That's right. So Todd mentioned a little bit about just that disconnection piece, and this is how all of these behaviors can become very harmful as young boys turn into men. And the first is emotional disconnection from yourself. You don't have the opportunity to understand your own emotions, which means things that are completely natural occurrences are confusing and scary and uncomfortable, and you may not have a path to get help with that because you've been taught to just deal with it and move on.
Yeah, and that's that parallel to what I was saying. If you keep putting that character out in front of you, you're never expanding out to your more complex emotions that you have and that you don't talk about.
Yeah, if you've watched any amount of dating videos on YouTube or all these movies and TV shows that talk about the way that I knew that you were the one is because I can truly be myself.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
That's such a true statement, that if you cannot be fully yourself, if you can't be vulnerable and say, look, I'm really uncomfortable right now and I don't know why, but I need to talk about it. If you can't say that with your closest partner or a coworker that you're working with very closely or a friend, then there's that lack of connection to yourself and potentially to others.
Yeah, and are you trying to say that like men and women have a shared language when it comes to interacting sometimes? That's amazing. I never thought about that.
Blowing your mind here?
Yeah, and see, that's another thing. Yeah, we all are different, but there are certain things that we both want, and honesty, with that kindness, like we're always saying. Yeah, honest voice.
But, we need a soundbite for that.
Yeah, honest voice. So those are the kind of things that we all just want, that openness and honesty without those negative responses, because those negative responses just causes, we call it the knowledge insecurity loop. It's where, another honest voice
called that too. That's right. Yes.
We have a book on this. The knowledge insecurity loop is exactly what we were talking about a moment ago, is that people are afraid to ask a question because they're afraid that someone will laugh at them, which makes them in the dark and have less information. So we create this loop to where we have this large number of people that are performing like they're experts when they're really not, and that's keeping people around them from actually learning, including themselves. It's keeping them from learning, because if they think they know it all, they're not going to risk researching, because then somebody might see it because of their mindset and say, oh, I guess you don't know it all. There's just all these complex factors where we're constantly putting each other down for trying to learn something or making fun of somebody because they didn't understand something or they didn't know anything. It's keeping us all in the dark. It's keeping us from expanding. It's keeping these performances being the forefront of our personality rather than actually developing our personality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when we're not teaching our young men how to understand their emotions and how to communicate about them, then we're limiting their ability to develop emotional language. And how often have we seen in every movie and TV show that you never talk to me, you don't talk to me about how you're feeling? Well, it may very well be that folks are never getting any training growing up about how to express, to how to name an emotion. Something as simple as that, something that I think it's safe to say most women are given a lot of practice with, is naming our emotions. Men aren't always given that, so they may not know the difference between how to label confusion versus frustration versus loneliness versus sadness. As silly as that sounds, it's a fundamental thing that not a lot of men are taught.
Yeah, I mean, think about this. Growing up in your household, and these are generational issues that we've talked about. In fact, our first book, Finding Your Honest Voice, we've got a whole chapter in there on just not only the generational communication styles for each generation, but also the impact of words in a whole separate chapter of how certain words, certain behaviors actually do damage. So think about this, is that if a young man grows up in a household where emotions are never discussed, then they literally have no vocabulary for it when they get it, when they become an adult. The other thing I want to add here really quick, and we might have said it before, but I also want people to keep in mind that with these deficits, yelling at somebody is not going to fill those deficits. No. And we get it because it can be very frustrating, especially when you've had failed relationships in the past and there seems to be a certain consistency, or you feel that your voice is not heard. But those frustrations, that's something that you would be better to learn to cope with and try to reduce that, because even coming at somebody and saying, why don't you ever talk to me? Okay, I'm not yelling, but my expression is definitely showing I've got a problem with the way you are acting.
And that why question just makes people feel defensive.
That's true. Yeah, keeping the why out of there is that's a crisis intervention team training. Yeah. Big no-no. Don't use the word why, because it puts people on the defensive. Even calling them out, like, you never talk to me, you never say anything, I never know what's going on in your head. Those things don't provoke a person to suddenly go, oh, okay, well, now I'm going to tell you. Because they not only don't feel comfortable telling, but they don't know the words to say.
I don't know how to identify it.
Yeah, and the words, once you learn them, they become very simple. I mean, it is so liberating to be in a relationship where even if the moment is tense, that somebody feels comfortable saying, I don't know what's wrong with me right now, but I feel off.
Yes.
And that's something to share in that moment, because we deal with a lot of law enforcement who say, I don't talk about certain things at home, and we tell them, share the G-rated version of what you're dealing with. You don't have to give the details of a bad call, but share it, because you think you're protecting your family, but you're really just isolating.
You're isolating.
You're just talk a lot about intent and impact. Okay, the intent is to protect. It's noble, it's valid, but the impact is that person feels that you don't trust them enough to share.
And they feel disconnected.
Yeah.
They're missing out on a big part of your life, and they want to understand it, and they want to empathize, and they're not getting that opportunity because you are focusing on making sure they don't hear things that are going to make them sad.
Right.
When there's a way to do that meets both needs.
Exactly. Another big one, and this is one of mine that I've used a lot in my earlier days, is I don't want to be a burden to anyone, and that's a big problem. But also, I'm going to say that right now, and this, I'm going to go off on a mild tangent, but people who break up with the other person because they're like, I don't feel worthy, or I don't feel like I'm good enough for you, and all those things, that is something that has to stop. I know, for lack of a better phrase, and it's got to be worked on. A lot of times that's a performance where you're testing the other person, and you want to see, you want to hear that, no, you are good enough.
Yeah.
But those are not for you to decide. It's for the other person to decide. If they don't think you're good enough, then that's their prerogative. If they think you're a burden, then that's going to be their prerogative. Ask first. A lot of times, if you just show that you care about that concern, releases that burden. You won't be a burden to someone when you say, I don't want to bother you, but I'd really like to talk about this right now if it's okay.
Yeah.
And that way, it's a choice, it's a collaboration. It isn't a person so-called dumping on another person, or a person feeling dumped on.
So another thing you might hear someone say is, I'll just deal with this later. It seems like it's a way to push it off for a little while, but the truth is we don't really ever get back to later. We don't really ever go back and deal with it. All that means is that I don't feel comfortable dealing with this right now. I'd rather just ignore it.
Or I don't know how.
Or I don't know how,
Yeah.
exactly. And but what we know is that if there's a lack of skill or a lack of knowledge, then this is where learning to be a little bit vulnerable can be really helpful.
Yeah, that's true. So turning this around, a lot of these the way they harm relationships is if you're trying to fix everything, you're obviously not listening. So there's a lot of times when people will say, I just want to feel heard, I just want to vent, things like that. And then I've had the blowback when I've tried to help other men, and I explain to them that they don't want your input when they're asking for help. And I've heard, well, then why don't they just say that? It's like, well, that is their communication style. Like I've said, we aren't taught how to communicate. So this is what we mean. In certain cultures, certain things like I have a stomach ache means that they're having a problem with their significant other, or I have a headache. It's expressed in different communication styles. And all they're saying is basically, I need help, and the help that I need is for you to listen, be attentive, okay? Be attentive and support me in the style that I need. One of the worst things that happens when people reach out for help is that person that's helping, they get very disgruntled by the fact that you don't take their advice or comply with right away, which gives that person a new problem now.
That's right.
So I'm already sad, and then you come in and you tell me, well, you just sit around all day. Of course you're going to be sad. Go do something. They open up the blinds. They tell you to get out of bed. And you're like, that's not the help that I need. And then there's like, fine, I guess I won't help at all. And now you have these two problems. And that's, once again, goes back to the transactional thing. I will help you as long as it makes me feel good about what I'm doing.
As long as you're going to do exactly what I say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if I feel uncomfortable because of the help that I'm giving, I'm going to take it out on you now.
Yes.
And that's where the problematic communication is. So if you're trying to fix something, then you're not listening.
Yep. We also see cases where dominance will replace collaboration. If we're having an emotional conversation and one person doesn't feel comfortable with that level of emotion, then they might just try to dominate and say, look, well, we're just going to do this instead, or I don't really want to talk about this anymore. So then we've lost the ability to come together, be a little bit vulnerable, and try to find a solution together because one person has decided, I don't have the bandwidth to take all this in right now, so we're just going to stop.
Yeah.
Which is a very disconnecting way to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, if you're trying to control the situation, and control can be through bullying. A lot of feedback that we get, there are a lot of situations where someone will say, hey, can we talk about this? It could be finances. It could be the way we parent. It could be just our normal daily routine, help around the house, things like that. And from either side, this isn't even in one direction. But frequently when a person is approached, they'll say, hey, can we talk about this? And you'll get the, what now? Or why do we always have to have a problem? And this is just, it's avoidance. And it's also control, because in that moment, you're controlling the situation to shut it down before you even discuss it. And a lot of that comes from fear.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already identified anger, and that fear is a lot of cases is the base emotion for anger. So it's expressed, and it looks more competent because society has made that occur. But it's not. Just think about this, and we're going to say this over and over again. If there's something you can't do, like stay calm in the moment, that's a deficiency.
Yeah.
So it's not strength to be able to aggressively assert yourself. What strength is being able to maintain respect, control, and kindness in those moments. And I'm not saying the kind of kindness where you're letting people walk all over you.
Right.
It's the not being insulting, not being condescending, not being sarcastic. That's the kindness that we're talking
Absolutely
about.
right. Yeah. If you've ever heard someone say to you, well, what are you upset about this for? I fixed the problem. Well, by definition, if we're still talking about it, it's probably not fixed.
Exactly. I hear that one a lot. Like, I thought we solved that already. Okay, obviously it's not.
Right.
And that statement does not make it solved in that moment by reinforcing it. So there's obviously some still problematic things hanging on. Now, I will give a variable in this one. There are a lot of times when people in relationships will bring up problems over and over again because they're insecure about the relationship. So they don't let things go on purpose because they just want that reinforcement. They want that reassurance. Well, I'm just scared you're going to do it again. But that doesn't stop anything. In fact, if anything, that kind of not finding coping skills to solve the problem so you can move forward is actually degrading the relationship. So you need to come up with a solution that satisfies both individuals. And that's the only way to really move forward. And until that happens, it might pop up again. But if you're using it just to beat the other person down, like you did this 7 years ago and it still bothers me, that's not a problem on their part. That's a problem on the individual saying that. That's an inability to cope with a situation. If you've decided that you want to continue in the relationship based on a problem that occurred, then you're also saying that I'm willing to move forward past this and build instead of constantly use things that keep us either stagnant, stuck in that past or memory, or just degrading the present.
Yeah, and the only way to truly be able to move on from any kind of problem, big or small, is that when you're working together to resolve it or come up with a compromise or a solution, both people have to be emotionally present. And sometimes that is impacted by one person's discomfort in talking about the raw, emotional, painful stuff. If there was, in the case of a romantic relationship, if there was an affair, maybe the person who had the affair is having a hard time acknowledging the deeper emotions that brought that on. And if we're not going to address them, then they will come up years and years and years later.
Yeah.
Some cases because it wasn't resolved the first time, in some cases because the other party still feels insecure and likes to just hold that over their head for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
So it's important to assess really why it is that some of these conversations continue year after year.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a tough one, when it comes to infidelity and things like that. I don't see a lot of situations in my experience that thrive after that kind of situation. Yeah. It usually stays rocky, even when if you're going to marriage counseling and things like that. But I mean, people do get through it.
They
do put it past them. But the main thing is respectful communication is going to be the only way. Respectful and honest communication, open communication. Well, that really hurt me because of this. I don't know if I can handle it effectively. I'm struggling with it. Is there support that you could give me to maybe compromise some reassuredness? You have to weigh all that out, but it only happens with communication. It only happens with respectful, kind honest communication. Yeah.
Exactly right. So what's true about strength, especially as we're talking about communication with men, is that strength includes emotional honesty. Being vulnerable is a strength. It takes courage to do that. And trust grows from openness, not from control. I don't want the performance version of how you feel about something that's happened in our marriage. I'll only be able to feel comfortable if I know how you truly feel about it, and if we walk through those feelings, even if they're difficult to talk about, together.
Right.
That's how you know we've actually got it all out on the table and we'll be able to move forward together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So with that vulnerability, based on the fact that we've basically sculpted this, is we hide a lot of stuff. We keep a lot of secrets. We keep a lot of things close to us because we say that if people know that, then they could hurt me with it. But I mean, honestly, and this might be unrealistic to a certain degree, but as I said before, a person bringing up something in an office and you're worried that people are going to laugh at you, if you are getting defensive about something, it shows a deficiency in your ability to cope with that particular situation. So you build up those coping skills first and tell yourself, if they don't listen to me, I'm going to be okay with that because I know that I tried. That builds a coping skill right there. You're not getting offended. You're not getting upset. And you've also learned that getting upset with them is not going to suddenly make them a communicating genius and, open up the communication better than you've ever had before. The only way to do this really is to learn a new language, basically, like we've said before. And I think we brought this up in a previous podcast. Carolsue has her style and I had my style coming into the relationship, but we built our own style of communication that works for both of us. That's not a compromise. That's not I didn't have to suppress something in order to make that. We figured out what works best and tested those things. But the main thing is that we don't build enough coping skills to deal with the fallout. We just avoid. We just hide. It's like, well, they're going to get mad at me. It's like, well, okay, if they get mad, that's on them. And I'm just going to say next time, once they calm down, I'm going to say, look, when things get elevated, we don't have any solution, and that problem will exist continuously forever, and it needs to be solved.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't realize that they're really having the same problem over and over again. Yeah,
it's true. That's
you might
common.
be fighting about the kids, you might be fighting about dinner, you might be fighting about schedules, but you're fighting about a communication deficiency that people aren't connecting effectively. And once you find these ways to communicate, there's a whole massive difference of things that just the other problems just dissipate.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, we found out after a couple of years of working this, it's like we haven't even brought up something that was a consistent problem because we fixed it in another way and it just made the other one go away. We just immediately adapted to this new style that makes things work between us.
So I think the best thing any of us can do in relationships when we're trying to keep communication open is to be honest, even if we're unsure. I think so many of us feel like, well, I need to have the perfect thing to say before I can start to resolve this issue. And we would strongly discourage that. we think the best thing you can do is say how you're honestly feeling. I'm not sure what to do about this right now, but I do want to work this out with you. This is important to me. I'm just not sure where to start. That's absolutely not mastery, and it's not, I know how to handle it, but it is, I'm here with you and I want us to figure it out together. I'm just not sure where to start. That's a reach out for connection.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
the critical thing right there.
Yeah. And a frequent word that comes up a lot now is I feel overwhelmed. And the reason you feel overwhelmed is because, first of all, you're probably maxed out when it comes to stress levels. And then something new comes along that you don't have a vocabulary for.
That's true.
A lot of times we're overwhelmed not because of the numerous situations. It's like we have been exposed to something now that I have never had to adapt to, cope with, or deal with. That's scary.
Yeah.
So we call it overwhelm.
That's right.
And basically is the best approach to that is brainstorm. You know, it's like, can we talk about some of the things that I'm dealing with right now and seeing if you can break it up? A lot of times talking through these things, I mean, I've been on scene for a person in crisis, and I have stood there for like 2 hours, and I didn't say anything helpful in that moment other than, wow, that sounds like a big problem. Wow, I can see how that would, I say wow a lot, but that seems really stressful. I can see why that would be frustrating. And I haven't contributed anything to the conversation. I haven't offered advice. I haven't
solved the problem.
I haven't given reframes or alternative perspectives. It's just there in that moment listening. And you watch people, especially with overwhelm, is they'll sort it out and they'll see it before them metaphorically. And they'll be like, you know what, this is not as big of a deal as I thought. I'm going to go ahead and I can just sort of section these off now and work one at a time.
Exactly.
And then suddenly they're not overwhelmed.
Exactly. And just you standing by and giving them an opportunity to metaphorically lay it all out, let them move forward to the next step without you having to have the answer.
Yeah, exactly.
So let that be one of our biggest messages, is you never have to have the answer to be able to connect to people and be helpful and supportive to them. That's what's critical. So when in doubt, share that I need some help with this.
Yeah.
And if you struggle with asking for help, or if you struggle with even acknowledging that you don't know the answer to something, we do strongly recommend our book, The Knowledge Insecurity Loop, because it talks about the fact that this is a phenomenon. This is something that happens to all of us. There are reasons why we struggle to ask for help.
Yeah.
And there's a way around it.
Not just from the overall social thing, but also from a societal standpoint. When you ask for help, you're collaborating. You're not saying, I'm completely helpless and I need you to do
fix
this with
for
me.
I'm just going to sit over here and wait for you to fix this for me.
Exactly. That's not what it's saying. And that's the kind of social influence that we put on that thing. Well, if you need help, but man, I have had the most simplest ideas come from people that like set me free. It's like, well, have you ever thought about this? I'm like, no, I didn't. Thank you.
It's
you know, because that person's entire history, background, and education is completely different than mine. So what I'm saying right here is that based on my experience, my life, my education at this moment, I don't have the tools to proceed.
Yep.
And that's all it is. I mean, it's the same thing as walking into a classroom. You're not walking into the classroom going, oh man, I'm really intimidated by the professor because he knows everything I don't know and he's about to teach me. That just seems illogical, but that is what we do in the presence of each other. So, I mean, I take great pride of when I say I don't know something and somebody goes, you didn't know that? And I'm like, no, I didn't. I like smile. I'm like, no, but I'm learning now.
That's right.
And this is exciting. So tell me more. And you can see them like, oh, okay. Like they just don't know how to respond to that kind of thing. Please share.
So the good news for all of us is that we are not bound by what we did or did not learn growing up, right? So we can redefine the way we communicate in our relationships as men. First step we can take is to speak honestly instead of feeling the need to perform. Even if the truth of how you're feeling is uncomfortable, the truth is the safest place to start.
Yeah, and remember that our big motto is that kindness without honesty is performance, and honesty without kindness is cruelty. So pick the right words. You got to think about that intent and impact. And if the intent is to really get someone's help, get them on board with you, then say it in such a way that makes them want to help. Yes. That's the thing that always baffles me, like people that go to customer service and they're angry. This is like one of my things, and I bring this up in crisis intervention training about state police and stuff like that, but people who yell at a customer service person, I'm like, what do you think the outcome is going to be from this? Like, do you really think they're going to be like, wow, you're really angry. I want to help you a lot. I mean, like, I really want to help you. Or people that get pulled over by state police and the first thing they're doing is like, they're sneering. You can see them when
gesturing like, yeah.
So they think that the state policeman's going to go like, whoa, man, hey, I didn't mean to make you angry. You know, let's just forget about your speeding 100 mile per hour in a 55. I don't want to deal with this, and I sure don't want to make you mad. That's never going to happen. You're never going to get the best outcome from an aggressive. I mean, never. You're never going to intimidate somebody enough. I mean, if you're in a Walmart, they've got security, they've got managers. They're not afraid of you.
That's
so
right.
if you're trying to make them afraid of you in order to comply or break a rule, it's never going to work. So it always baffles me why people go that route.
Yeah. So we also recommend listening without trying to solve the problem immediately.
That's a big deal.
Lately, I've heard several of my friends say they've got kind of agreements with their partners or spouses where they'll come home and say, all right, I have an issue. I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to listen. Or
Very
on
good.
the other end, if they say, I got so frustrated at work today, sometimes Todd will say, do you need me to just hear this? Or
Yeah.
are you looking for some tips on how to fix it? So that way, we're setting the table for what it is that I need and what it is that he can provide. But on our own, let's just try to listen without solving the problem immediately.
Yeah, a lot of people will, even in those cases, will get defensive with something like, oh, you just don't want me to talk? That doesn't help. And once again, you're just badgering someone to comply with your way,
Right.
rather than trying to learn their way that they need to communicate in that moment.
That's a perfect example of
Yeah.
controlling instead of contributing to the
Exactly,
conversation.
right.
Yeah. And allow emotion without losing authority. So it's okay to have emotions when you're talking about things that are important. You don't have to control them, but you also should try your best not to try to control others' expressions of emotions. Don't try to stifle it or dismiss it or move on to the next topic.
Yeah, I mean, and part of that is when you say dismissive, a lot of that is they'll try to reduce what your issue is.
Yes,
Like, why are you making
minimize,
such
yes,
a big
yes,
deal
yes.
out of that? Which doesn't stop the person from having the problem. They still have the problem. Pointing out people's behavior, like, you're sort of being a jerk right now, none of that ever makes anybody feel better. I mean, really, just say what you're trying to do in that moment. I want you to feel bad about the way you're acting, hoping that you'll change it. And that never works. One thing that I use, even especially with strangers, is, can I just get you to talk like at the same level I am? I'm not asking you to do anything special. Our communication would go better if we could both respect each other equally.
Yes.
And I'll say, not you need to, or you have to, or complaining.
But can we agree to this rule while we're having this conversation?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's molehill is somebody else's mountain, and vice versa. And we just need to respect that for them, that is how they're feeling it, how they're seeing it. You know, and that's based on their educational attainment, their background, and their impact. And especially when you come home from work, the person at home has no idea what you're really dealing with.
True.
So you're communicating it to the best of your ability. You're not going to be able to give all the details. You're not going to be able to immerse them on how really rude your boss was.
Yeah.
So it's real easy to say, well, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but just go with how they feel about it and support them in the way that they need in that moment.
Exactly. And you can demonstrate that support by saying things like, I don't have an answer yet, but I do want to understand what you're feeling.
Yeah.
But we can also use phrases like, this matters to me more than I realized, to acknowledge why maybe you're feeling a little bit emotional about it. And you can tell your partner, I need to slow down and listen a little bit more. Just those little, you know, dipping our pinky toe into the pool of vulnerability.
Yeah.
Just share a little bit.
Right. And you're also modeling that communication when you do those things. If you can say, I need to slow down, or I'm making a mistake, or, hey, I'm sorry that landed wrong, or that I see how that impacted you, and I'm sorry for that, and that wasn't what I was intending. Don't say, I didn't mean to say it like that. That never works. And I really honestly don't know what that statement means.
I hear you. Yeah, it's
So-
right up there with what's that other one? I'm sorry you feel that way about what
Oh
I
yeah,
said.
yeah.
Love
That's
that one,
just
too.
that's just condescending. I've heard that one before. Think about this in practical examples of your parents. Model open communication, because if not, this is exactly what the child is going to become as a man. They're not going to have any vocabulary for it. I mean, honestly, it's our jobs as parents, for lack of a better phrase, coming from a military background, is we need to work harder to train them into becoming adults.
Yeah.
Of course, appropriate at their level. You do want to have those conversations. If your spouse is better at communicating those emotions, then prep that conversation. But as a man, you should be bringing that to your children from a man's standpoint.
Yeah.
And not only to the boy, but also to the girl,
Absolutely
because
right.
you want that model of what an appropriate male relationship would look like. With the son, you want to model that kind of behavior, so it's what they emulate, because kids don't do anything that you tell them to do. They only do what they see
Yes.
when they're mimicking your behavior.
Yes. So where you might be tempted to say something like, you're fine, you'll get over it. Instead, as a father, say, that sounds really hard. Tell me more about it. Open up the door for more communication. That's such a powerful model.
It really is.
And it will teach so much more quickly than saying, well, you know, when you're in a relationship, you know, with a romantic partner, you got to be open. demonstrate openness, model openness. That's how we learn.
Yeah, that's a big one too.
Yeah.
And then when someone has a problem, well, this is how I would solve it. That's not the first thing they want to hear. And just like Carolsue said, and I'm glad I do that.
You do that.
Yeah,
yes,
thank
you
you.
Good job.
That is, say, what would you need from me right now? What can I do? A lot of times I can sense that. I learned that in crisis intervention training.
That's
that
true.
I actually joke in the class saying I have this little voice in the side of my head, in the back of my head going, did they ask for help? Did they ask me a question? Did they ask for advice? And if it's no, then I just keep listening. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And that's in between them talking, not while they're talking. So I am active listening. I just want to clarify.
That's right. So in the workplace setting, if we're having trouble communicating and we're confusing control with respect, you might hear your boss say, just do it this way.
Yeah.
And a better response that allows for collaboration is help me understand your concerns. Remember that if you're in a supervisory position in your job, then you weren't always, and may have been a long time since you've done the job that your subordinates are now doing. So make sure that you're allowing them space to bring up the things that are troubling them right now in the present moment, so that then you can help them solve those issues.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's a collaboration. The leaders that I have had the luxury of having in my Navy career, I was very thankful.
Yeah.
I had very good role models. It doesn't seem like the military is the same that it was when I got out. Now, based on stories that I heard from other people, but I was very lucky. We were very proactive in training leadership, and we were very proactive in applying it. And it wasn't about screaming. It was always about, the one thing that we say in our leadership book is that, the best leaders are the leaders that encourage or set such an example that people want to follow them. Those are the best leaders.
True.
Not the ones that are forced to do things or told how to do things. It's the ones that really, really want to follow that individual, and that's a big deal. So as a leader, feel free to collaborate. Say, I don't have all the answers. In fact, I honestly believe as the best leaders is that you know who your experts are.
Yes. Oh my
You don't try to be that expert. You know who they are. It's like, well, you've done this longer than I have. There's a lot of offsetting skills that people have that you don't know what their background is, and they might be much more educated in solving a certain situation that you have as a leader.
That's right.
That you didn't think of.
Yes. So as we always do, we'll leave you with some things to reflect on and a couple of suggestions for practice. So this week, for the men in our audience especially, what myths did you hear growing up? Were you told silence is strength? Were you told that emotions are for weak people? Just think about the messages that you got growing up. And how has that shaped the way you communicate with your colleagues, your friends, your romantic partners, and your family members as an adult?
Yeah, reflect on things like that. And then for practice, since we always want to give you the tools, choose one conversation this week, and instead of fixing it or performing, be honest. Just be honest, be kind, be humble about it. See, I mean, a lot of times when I'm dealing with somebody that I know might get defensive, I always add a qualifier with, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Because that's true. You're not sure because you don't know how it's going to go, so you're not performing in this moment. Say, I'm not sure, but this seems like it might be a good idea. And that puts everybody at ease. And I use a lot of that in crisis intervention and negotiation. So it always is a question.
Yes.
Because you really don't know that when the words fly out of your mouth, they're actually going to land the way you intended, or they're even going to be helpful, even if you did intend whatever you're saying.
That's right. So what we know is that communication is not about proving your manhood. It's about improving connections in your relationships, whatever they may be.
Yeah, and once you become more comfortable, share these vulnerabilities around other men. And even if they try to be like, oh man, don't be saying that.
Don't tell me that touchy-feely stuff.
Yeah, touchy-feely. Like, hey, I'm a little nervous talking about this. And then if somebody does come back with social norms, say, hey, we don't need to do that. Let's talk about this. Let's talk. And that's the problem. If you can't do something, then it's showing a weakness. It's showing a certain deficiency. And I hate to use weakness. I'm not trying to get alpha males to go, oh, you call me weak? No, but I mean, think about it. If there are things...
They're probably not still listening at this
Yeah, that's
point.
true. Yeah, you probably didn't get past video 1.
Right.
2 months ago.
Yeah.
So the rest of you,
Yes.
share that stuff. Say, hey, we got to stop doing this. We need to connect. We need to start talking about this stuff. And say, hey, I could use some support here if you can help me. But always develop that coping skill that if I get rejected, I get laughed at or whatever, this is how I'm going to handle it.
Yep.
And that prepares you. And that's where the modeling occurs. That's where you're not getting hurt. You're not walking away. And you're not coming back with, you never listen to me. You always just make fun of me or things like that. That's not helping them, and you're not modeling the same behavior. It's like, sometimes it's difficult to talk to you because I feel like you don't take me seriously and it makes you uncomfortable, and I don't want to do that. So how can we bridge this gap together? Come up with the new language.
Yes,
Yeah.
the shared language. And I can tell you from the point of view of a woman that the men that I'm the most comfortable talking to, collaborating with, are people who have some level of emotional vulnerability.
Yeah.
So consider that, practice that this week, and absolutely join us for our next segment where we're going to talk about women and the unique challenges that we face in unsafe conversations.
Yeah. So just remember, in any communication situation, you're not trying to prove your manhood.
Yes.
Just communicate effectively in the language that both of you use. And if you're missing those pieces, then develop the language together and seek outside sources.
Yes. So thank you so much for hanging out with us today. This was a good one.
Yeah.
And we look forward to the bookend with the Women's Communication podcast next time.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about women's communication, so I won't be in this one. No, I'm just kidding. I'll be there for that.
Thank you again. We hope you have a great week.